So here we are, coming
Live again.
And we're going through this book. This is my
There you go.
comadre, who is my son-in-law's mother. We are co-madres together. And I think she's the one that bought them this book, The Second Mountain by David Brooks. And since we're not house sitting, we're dog sitting, I saw this book.
Granddaughter sitting and dog sitting, yes.
And I thought, why don't we just go through it really fast? Because I don't want to read it all. Let's go through really fast, and then.
So we go to the back of each chapter.
Go to the back of each chapter. So the first chapter is about moral ecologies, and basically it's saying there's always a tension between the self and society, and if things are too tightly bound, there's an urge to rebel. And we have a culture of I'm free to be myself. Oh, do you want to just pull that? Hang on.
We may have to edit this. Shall I stop it?
No, because we can't edit.
Oh, you can't edit. Oh, we're stuck. Right. So there was always a tension between self and society.
Right. Well, we're just doing a Facebook
If things
Live.
are too tightly bound, then the urge to rebel is strong. But we get the positive problems. Oh, and Val is coming back in. Who was that and why?
That was Sarah. They're just coming out of Taekwondo.
Oh, they were there.
Yes, it could have gone. Anyway, so this is saying that it's really hard on young adults to launch themselves into a world that's unstructured and uncertain.
Right. Who's
So-
come on?
So I think it's.
The stalker is back on,
So I think
and
it's.
Kirsten G is on.
I think it's
Right.
important. We're reading your book, Kirsty, The Second Mountain. So I think it's really important for people like us, I'm 70, Jeff's 71, to help young adults see that there is some structure and not to be afraid, right?
Well, right. But why is it unstructured? Because of the supposed freedom that we have now to do everything and go anywhere and be whatever we want to be. But if there's no thing to it, no structure, then it all falls apart.
Armando said that's his book. All right. Sorry, Armando.
Well, it's too late.
But-
It's ours now. We are reading it to the masses, to the 8,000 people that we've now got.
Anyway, he says in the second chapter that the Instagram of life, all at this points in one direction, is into the ditch. He says the person who graduates from school and pursues an aesthetic pattern of life often ends up in the ditch when they realize the truth that nobody told them is that freedom sucks.
Yeah.
So basically,
Well, you're right.
we need to fully commit to something, which I think you and I fully committed to family, I guess, and our business.
Right, because what is freedom? I don't really know what that means. Does that mean to go out and do whatever you want, whenever you want, and however you feel like it? And that leads to a moral decline.
Right.
If I can get away with something repeatedly, that's the way it is now. So we decline the more freedom we have. Because I think as human beings, we are moral compasses of ourselves, the inner voices. So that if we don't have guidance and consideration and purposefulness in how we approach ourselves and other humans, we're in trouble. Because if I was free to do whatever I want, I would.
Right.
And God help anybody that gets in the way.
We can't hear because there's a band playing. We'll listen later. Yes, this book was from Comadre, Kirsty says. Okay. Well, so then the third chapter is called The Insecure Overachiever, and that says you've got nothing but your identity and job title to rest on, and you find yourself constantly comparing yourself to others. And you're haunted by your conception of yourself, and people who live in this way imagine that there are other people who are enjoying career splendor and private joy. That loser in college who did nothing but watch TV is now a big movie producer. That quiet guy in the training program is now a billionaire hedge fund manager. What does it profit a man to sell his own soul if others are selling theirs and getting more for it?
Ooh, deep.
That's very deep. So...
Yeah, and I get it. Yeah.
Do you? I don't quite get that. I mean, the insecure overachiever. So...
I think most of us are insecure, right? Isn't
Yes.
that the bit? So we're insecure, but we need to get as fast and do as what, which is what I did for a long time in the doing business. I just wanted to be the top, make as much money as I could. I would be the first one in, the last one out, diddly do, biddly dee.
Yeah.
But I'm also worried and freaked out.
Right.
Whereas if I wasn't worried and freaked out, would I be the same person? Or would I have total freedom again to do the unimaginable? See, if I had no moral compass,
Right.
which is what I call the opposite of freedom, to know that what I do is the right thing at the right time for the right people. If I didn't have that, you cheat, steal, you do whatever you want to be the overachiever. Does that make sense? Or am I just...
A little bit. I'm not
Get
sure.
out. You're supposed to talk to me about it and say, rubbish, Jeff. Or I don't understand a word you've just said.
Let's move on.
She wants to, in other words, I am.
No, I just
complete schmucklehead. What
Yeah, all right. Well, chapter 4 is the valley.
Oh, that sounds ominous.
It talks about the loneliness crisis, distrust, the crisis of meaning, and finally, suffering shatters the illusion of self-sufficiency. Many people don't come out healed, they come out different. The poet Ted Hughes observed that the things that are the worst to undergo are often the best to remember. Because at those low moments, the protective shells are taken off, humility is achieved, a problem is clearly presented, and a call to service is clearly received.
So through pain and suffering,
Yeah,
we become better human beings.
I guess so.
Is that what I think? That's
Yeah, it's in the valley.
Because
right.
I know every trial and tribulation that I've gone through at the time was absolutely horrendous. But looking back, it was like, wow. And because of that happened.
Right.
If I hadn't gone through this, we wouldn't have got to there. So I think suffering and problems and upset and misery are part of the life.
So this chapter 5, it says it's called the wilderness. He says the normal reaction to a season of suffering is to try to get out of it. Address the symptoms, have a few drinks, play a few sad records, move on. But the right thing to do when you're in moments of suffering is to stand erect in the suffering.
Yes.
Wait, see what it has to teach you. Understand that your suffering is a task that, if handled correctly, with the help of others, will lead to enlargement, not diminishment.
Absolutely, just what I've just said.
Yeah. So the valley is
I like this guy. He thinks...
where we shed our old self so the new
Yes.
self can emerge. And there's no
How many chrysalis have you gone through?
Chrysalis?
Crystal.
Oh, chrysalises. Oh, yeah.
Chrysalises to become a butterfly.
Right. Oh, this is good. So it's at this deep level that you sense a different life when your ego cannot fathom. There's something in you that senses, as C.S. Lewis wrote.
Yes, I love him.
The scent of a flower we have not found, the echo of a tune we have not heard, news from a country we have not yet visited. So shedding the old self so the new self can emerge. So it's at this point when you realize you're a much better person than your ego ideal. It's at this point when you really discover the heart and soul. And then that's chapter 6 is heart, and soul.
Very good.
So this is about, he read a passage in a book about a guy who bought a house with a bamboo stand growing near his driveway, decided to get rid of it, cut it down, took an axe to the roots, smashed it into little pieces, dug down, poured poison over what remained, filled the hole with several feet of gravel, paved it with cement, and then 2 years later he noticed something, a little green bamboo shoot pushing up through this. Can you imagine that?
It's a good story, I think.
No, bamboo is.
Oh,
totally.
I know bamboo is amazing.
It's a grass, right?
Right.
It's unquenchable. It could not stop pushing upwards. And what he says is we have something like that inside ourselves.
The human spirit, isn't it?
It's our desire.
Heart and Soul. That was our first book, was going to be called
Customer Service,
Heart and Soul.
Yeah, that's true.
But the publishers, McGraw-Hill, said no, make it Super Service.
Yeah.
Still upset about that.
So we have a season when we chase the shallow things in life, we're not fulfilled. Then comes hardship, which exposes the heart and soul. The heart and soul teaches we cannot give ourselves what we desire most. Fulfillment and joy are on the far side of service. Only then are we really able to love. Only then are we able to begin the second journey. And then chapter 7 is committed life.
Oh, that sounds difficult already to me.
So
as soon as I hear commitment, you mean I have to do lots of things? And God.
Well, so it says individual says shoot for personal happiness, but the person on the second mountain says, no, I shoot for meaning and moral joy.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
So we're skipping through it, but when your life is defined by fervent commitments, you are on the second mountain. I'm not sure.
Have you got fervent commitment? No. Well, this is fervent commitment to do this. Huge hand coming up. This is great.
All right. Chapter 8, the second mountain. There's a little story here. So these two people had a son named Santi who went to a public school in Washington. Santi had a friend named James who sometimes went to bed hungry. So Santi invited him to occasionally sleep over at his house. James had a friend and that kid had a friend, so on. Now, if you go to Kathy and David's house on any given Thursday night, there'll be about 26 kids sitting around the dinner table. 26 kids around the dinner table. There are generally 4 or 5 living with Kathy and David, with other families nearby. And every summer, Kathy and David round up a caravan and take about 40 kids out of the city for a vacation on Cape Cod. That's responding to the needs around them. They are now at the center of a sprawling, extended family. That is so sweet, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I feel like an absolute schmuck that we don't do anything like that.
Well, because we don't like kids. So
I like kids.
Sorry, you like kids. I don't know if I could handle 20.
But here's the thing is like, I think this is sometimes what I overlook is like we are all connected and we all have different skills and tools and things that we can do. My skill is not to have 26 kids around the dining table or take 40 kids to Cape Cod in a caravan. It's not my skill, but it's fabulous that some people like Kathy and David are doing that. And I think that's, when we talk about gratitude, I think it's like, to me, gratitude is really like reaching out our minds to think of all of the millions of people who are doing stuff like this. But some people who are just, taking the garbage away. Some people who are looking after dogs or dogs, people are doing their little tasks so that we can sit here now and pontificate on Facebook Live.
So all of us have got something wonderful.
Yes.
It's whether we find it or not.
Well, I think we find it by realizing like where we are and what it is that we're good at. I mean, you're funny. You're good at being funny. You're not
Thank you very much.
Very funny right now, but
I thought I was, but obviously we should ask the stalker if I'm being funny or not, or just annoying.
So the second mountain life is a spiritual adventure, but it's lived out very practically day by day. But again, I think it's like the small things. It's like waking up and, celebrating the sunshine, the rain, whatever, celebrating that somebody's mending the road outside your house or, whatever. Like just look around and see life. Right?
Right.
Small things. So then this is part 2 of the book. It's called The 4 Commitments. Part 2 is vocation and what vocation looks like. And it says, in 1946, George Orwell published a brilliant essay called Why I Write, about his vocation as a novelist and essayist. And in it, he tries to puncture a lot of the pious and pretentious writing about writing, blah, blah, blah. He writes, he says, for 4 basic reasons. First, sheer egoism, the desire to seem clever and get talked about. Second is aesthetic enthusiasm, the pleasure he gets from playing with sentences and words. And then the historic impulse, the desire for understanding, the desire to see things as they are and find out true facts. And then fourthly, political purpose, the desire to push the world in a certain direction and to alter people's ideas of what sort of society they should strive for. I like that. But I think we each do that in our own small way. I mean, like just walking out of the house in the morning, smiling at a stranger, like you did this morning when you talked to that guy who, his arm was in a sling and his face was bruised. And you said, wow, what's happened to you? And the guy's like, I was run over by a truck, hit by a truck.
Hit by a truck. I don't think he'd be alive if he was run over by one.
No, he wouldn't.
But we went to try and help him as we saw him on the way back, but he'd already got to where he was going, so we didn't get a chance to help him with his big bag.
Right, and he was going to the YMCA, so I'm thinking maybe he was homeless. I mean, he looked a little bit, did he get hit by a truck? But anyway, I thought you did a great job just extending that hand.
And you were making up a story about the poor bugger.
I was.
He was homeless, drunk, and walked into the path of the truck.
Well, it doesn't matter if he was homeless and drunk. The guy is a human being and he still needs help, whatever, right?
Absolutely.
So this guy, he says, a summons to vocation, very holy thing. It feels mystical, like a call from deep to deep. But then the messy way it happens in actual life doesn't feel holy at all. I love that because it is messy. Life is freaking messy. It's confusing and screwed up. And over the next few chapters, he tries to describe how vocations are found and how they grow.
I think I might have to go.
Oh, to the bathroom? All right.
Just tell everybody.
Jeff's going.
This woman has no filter about anything.
Well, just go. You could have just said, I'm going to make a cup of tea. You didn't.
And then leave.
Yes, nobody cares.
You would have shouted all the way, where are you going and why?
Are we going to ever see you again?
Probably not.
Right, all right.
I was in the emergency room, yesterday.
Off you go. Just make sure you go somewhere where nobody can hear you.
Show me.
Anyway, I'll make this very quick. The Annunciation moment, this is where, E.O. Wilson, when he was 7, his parents announced they were getting a divorce and they sent him away over the summer to stay with a family he didn't know in Paradise Beach, northern Florida. And every morning he'd have breakfast with the family and then wander alone on the beach. And that after lunch, he'd head back to the water to wander until dinner. And he saw crabs and shellfish, and one day he saw his first jellyfish, and he said it was amazing. And so to a child, everything looks bigger. And when he was 7 years old, he saw animals about twice the size that he sees them now, and he was transfixed by these silent creatures. But he also glimpsed a hidden new world under the waters that he wanted to explore. And then that summer, a naturalist was born. So, yeah, that's, I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's like, what do we really like? What interests us? What makes us curious? And then, kind of going after that. So that was him. And 40 years later, he got down on his hands and knees, peering again at the lion ants. And an elderly man passing by was alarmed to see a grown man crawling on all fours on the sidewalk and asked if he needed any help. But of course, he was just returning to his childhood love and continuing his lifelong call. So then chapter 11 is what do mentors do? So yeah, I had mentors. I'm not really sure. I think I could have probably had more mentors than because to have a mentor, you have to kind of well, A, realize what it is you want mentoring in, and B, be willing to accept help. But here he says, eventually everyone gets cut adrift and you're faced with the big decisions on your own. Maybe you had the clearest enunciation moment. Maybe you had the best mentor, and there'll still be big, baffling decisions that you have to make. Do I take this job or that job? Do I use my talents this way or that way? Do I move to this city or that city? How do you make these big transformational decisions of life? It is to that problem that we now turn. So he calls chapter 12 vampire problems. He says, let's say you had the chance to become a vampire with one magical bite. You would gain immortality, superhuman strength, and a life of glamorous intensity. You'd have all sorts of new skills. You could fly around at night, drink human blood and blah. The difficulty of the choice is that you have to use your human self to guess if you would enjoy being a vampire self. And philosopher L.A. Paul calls it a transformative choice. It's the sort of choice that changes who you are. And he says life is filled with vampire problems. Marriage turns you into a different person. Having kids changes who you are and what you want. Emigrating to a new country, which is what Jeff and I did and our kids did, changed us. Converting to a different religion, going to med school, joining the Marines, changing careers, deciding on where to live. Every time you make a commitment to something big, you're making a transformational choice. And all these decisions have a measure of uncertainty about the future. So making transformational choices is tough. You don't know what your transformed self will be like. That's true. So things that seem sweet now may seem disgusting to the new you. And then there's new sorts of misery and joy. So look around and see people facing these sorts of transformational decisions. And then they screw up, you know. More than a third of all marriages end in divorce. People who waste years following career paths that don't satisfy them. 83% of all corporate mergers, 83% of all corporate mergers fail to create any value for shareholders. So don't fool yourself. You have no idea what you're getting into. So, and he says, no wonder many people have commitment phobia. People paralyzed by making big choices. So they just kind of sleepwalk through them. I've done that myself, like just sometimes I just kind of switch off because I'm like, I don't know really what to do. When it comes to choosing a vocation, people kind of slide rather than decide. And they slide incrementally into a career because someone gave them a job. They marry the person they happen to be living with. So let's see what he says at the end, because there's a lot of verbiage here, but let's see what he says at the end. This is what I'm doing with this book. I'm just kind of like really a real synopsis. He says, find that place in the self that is driven to connect with others. That spot where, as the novelist Frederick Buechner famously put it, your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. God, I love that. Your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. Okay. 13 is mastery. So this is all about becoming the boss, mastery again. I'm just flipping through this. It says, it stays in the mind a vision of a person who has found a total commitment and an example of the way a vacation, when lived out to the fullest, connects all things, comes together in one coherent package, overshadows the self, and serves some central good. So I think that, again, it comes back to what is it that you are good at? What is it that I'm good at? So when we are good at something, so like when I'm writing and I'm in the flow, it just like, I feel like I disappear and the writing just comes through. and I really enjoy it. So I think whatever it is that you're good at is something that you just do without realizing even what you're doing. So then chapter 14, the maximum marriage. So this guy, Jack Gilbert, was born in Pittsburgh in 1925. He failed out of high school, worked manual jobs, bummed around Europe before establishing himself as a poet and teacher. Much of his writing was about love, especially his love for his wife. And then he died of cancer at 36. Shortly after her death, she died of cancer at 36. After her death, he wrote a poem called Married. It's a rather long poem, so I'm not going to read that. If you want to read it, you can get the book and read that. It's oh, well, go on, I will read it. What the hell? It's a short one, actually. I came back from the funeral and crawled around the apartment crying hard, searching for my wife's hair. For 2 months, got them from the drain, from the vacuum cleaner, under the refrigerator, and off the clothes in the closet. But after other Japanese women came, there was no way to be sure which were hers, and I stopped. A year later, repotting Michido's avocado, I found a long black hair tangled in the dirt. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So, passion peaks among the young, but marriage is a thing that peaks in old age. That is really true. I'm finding that my marriage is peaking, and but that's not to say it's always good. It's like we get annoyed with each other, as my 2 daughters will attest to when I call them up, or like, oh, your dad's driving me crazy. So yeah, it's always, it's never exactly easy. It's messy. Life is messy. And true love does not always like, wow, isn't this great? We annoy each other. We get frustrated with each other, and then we talk about it and get over it. So, so let me see. Let's go to the end of this. And again, because this is like a real quick synopsis of this book. So marriage is a sort of thing where it's safer to go all in, and it's dangerous to go in half-hearted. At the far end, when done well, you see people enjoying the deepest, steady joy you can find on this earth. And yeah, if it doesn't work out the first time or the second time or whatever, just keep going, because I think it is good to be with someone if you can be. But the great thing is, what I love about today in this world, on this planet, is we do not have to get married. Like when I was 20 years old, that was the thing we all did. We all got married, and then we all had kids. Thank goodness we don't have to do that. We don't have to get married. We don't have to have kids. We can lead a great life by ourselves and have friends and family and that kind of thing. Chapter 15, the stages of intimacy 1. So it says, how do 2 strangers get to the point where they want to marry? Well, they follow the stages of intimacy, and it's never the same in any 2 cases. But there's some general patterns. It starts with a glance. You take a little look at a person, like many of the million glances you take each day. But this time, unexpectedly, a spark is struck, a flame is lit, an interest is aroused, and some kind of kindling gets lit in a surprising way. The person you're looking at seems thrillingly new. Wow. Also feels familiar. Love begins with seeing. It's the quality of attention. In some cases, maybe when the glimpser is a little older, there's a mixture of, behold, my joy appears, and uh-oh, here comes trouble. Anyway, so curiosity, that's the second stage of intimacy, the desire to know. Dialogue, that's the third state. You talk. Jeff and I talk a lot. Sometimes it drives him nuts, but pushing on a dialogue between 2 people takes the form of a tennis rally. One partner takes a deep breath, provides a small display of, this is what I like, shares favorite movies, and then you volley back and forth. What's the final thing here? It says, this is what Martin Buber called pure relation, when it becomes I, thou. This is what it feels like to be known. So when you choose to marry someone, you better choose someone you'll enjoy talking with for the rest of your life. It doesn't work unless two people can fall into states of fluid conversational flow. The phone call lasts for hours. They spend a 14-hour day together and the words don't stop. Everything can eventually be said and every topic can be discussed. And then stages of intimacy 2. Let's go quickly to the end here. This is the poets had a field day about Paradise Lost. Milton's Adam to Eve in Paradise Lost. We are one flesh. To lose thee or to lose myself. This is my skin and it's thick. I don't know. Okay, 17, marriage decision. Why is this all about marriage? This is like a lot about marriage. I mean, the second mountain. I don't know. So this is about a couple, and they tasted tragedy in marriage. They lost 2 children, but it turned out gloriously. Anna managed his career, basically opened a publishing house for him and turned him into a financial and literary success. He never lost his deep respect for what he saw in her soul. Throughout my life, she wrote after his death, it has always seemed a kind of mystery to me that my good husband not only loved and respected me as many husbands love and respect their wives, but almost worshipped me as though I was some special being created just for him. And that was true not only at the beginning of our marriage, but through all the remaining years of it up to his very death. I have to say, Jeffrey G., he really kind of does worship me, which I really enjoy that. Now, that doesn't always come out that, again, that we don't have our frustrations and our arguments, but basically, if I'm in a room, he's always kind of looking for me, you know what I mean? And I'm looking for him. So we basically worship each other. It's great. Again, do we really want to all this marriage, the school you build together? We applaud people for having the 50th wedding anniversary, which we'll be having next year, because we know it's an achievement, even though to them it just feels like a delight. They're not done living, but they can pause on a winter's evening, lean their heads together, and stare into the fire. That's very true. And then this is about philosophy and faith. This is a big, long book. Intellectual commitments. Ultimately, joy is found not in satisfying your desires, but in changing your desires so you have the best desires. The educated life is a journey toward higher and higher love. There you go. Religious commitment. I'm not really into religion at the moment. For many years, I kept looking at different churches, different religions, different kind of spiritual activities. I'm not really into that at the moment. I feel that the spiritual activity for me is seeing that we're all connected and that we all are human beings in this together, and that when we live our lives the best way, we're helping ourselves and each other every day, just in doing very small things, like I say, smiling or letting someone in traffic, or that kind of thing. So the universe is alive and connected, these moments tell us. There are dimensions of existence you never could have imagined before. Quantum particles inexplicably flip together, even though they are separated by vast differences of time and space. Somehow the world is alive and communicating with itself. There is some interconnecting, animating force, and we are awash in that force, which we, with our paltry vocabulary, call love. And the odd thing about these moments is that, as Wyman continues, it is not only as if we were suddenly perceiving something in reality we had not perceived before, but as if we ourselves were being perceived. Whoa. But isn't that true? Like, the universe is alive and connected. There are dimensions of existence that we absolutely cannot imagine. Quantum particles flipping together separated by vast differences of time and space, and they're doing the same thing. Isn't that amazing? So whatever you and I are doing in any moment, we are having a huge effect on something in this, on this world, in this planet. If we're miserable and sending out bad energy, you know, if we react to what we hear on the news, to politicians that we don't like, and we react in an angry way, and we talk about it in a bad way, and, you know, kind of vociferous, and then that I do believe activates other particles, other people on the planet. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to activate nastiness. So chapter 21, most unexpected turn of events. Some people have dramatic stories of how they came to a faith. A blinding light appeared, a voice called, a trumpet blared. This guy, that nothing like that happened, and I think for most people that does not happen. So let's look again at the very end of this. It is, wow, this is a big chapter, but right at the end it says, there's no such thing as an egoistic self that is separated from everyone and everything else. That's the illusion of modernity. The best part of having taken a weird, strange trip over the past 5 years of my life is that it reminds me of the possibility that I might take another weird, strange trip over the next 5 or 10 or 20. So nothing is dismissed as too outrageous. When you've tied yourself to a spirit that you can't comprehend, nothing shocks you anymore, but everything brings you into a state of awe and wonder. I'm sure you've had that too. I mean, you know, when I've done sweat lodges or simple things, walking into a forest and the sunlight comes through, or somebody says something, and it's that moment of awe and like, wow, it feels fantastic. Chapter 22, ramps and walls. Let's just quickly see here. He says that throughout this book he's been talking about commitments as a series of promises that we make to the world, but consider the possibility that a creature of infinite love has made a promise to us. Consider the possibility that we are the ones committed to the objects of an infinite commitment, and that the commitment is to redeem us and bring us home. That is why religion is hope. He says, I'm a wandering Jew and a very confused Christian, but how quick is my pace? How open are my possibilities, and how vast are my hopes? So yeah, I think the big thing is to remember that we are human beings and we are all connected, and everything that we do has has an effect. So how do we want that effect to be? 23, the stages of community building. So on one day in the late 1950s, Jane Jacobs was looking out of her second-story window at a Greenwich Village street below. She noticed a man struggling with a young girl. The girl went rigid as if she didn't want to go wherever the man was leading her. The thought crossed Jacobs' mind that maybe she was witnessing a kidnapping. She was preparing to go downstairs to intervene when she noticed that the couple that owned the butcher shop had emerged from their store. Then the fruit man walked out from behind his stand, as did the locksmith and a few people from the laundry. That man did not know it, but he was surrounded. Jacobs wrote in The Death of Life of Great American Cities. It turned out to be nothing, just a struggle between father and daughter. But from it, Jacobs drew the right conclusion that safety on the street in a healthy neighborhood is not kept mostly by the police. It is kept by the intricate, almost unconscious network of voluntary controls and standards among the people themselves, enforced by the people themselves. So I get that, right? So there's the struggle going on, and all of these people come out of their shop to kind of try and help and see what was going on, instead of, I'm going to call the police. I think we're too frightened these days, like most people are not going out killing people with guns. Most people are great. Most people have families and friends, and they want to be great. So let's not be so scared to help. That's my thought anyway. This is, again, the stages of community building 1. I'm flipping right to the end of this. when you are unveiling yourself, it can feel like you're going backward. You realize there is so much trauma around, there's so much blame and so much forgiveness required. You realize there are so many people torn between the temptation to deny traumatic events and the desire to proclaim them. Excuse me. Often the struggle comes out as anger, blame, and fury, which can make repair seem impossible. But in fact, the honest, brutal story is the kind of story that produces combustion. We spend much of our time projecting accomplishments, talents, and capacity. Excuse me, my voice is going. The confrontation with weakness can have this detonating effect. So, yeah, when we realize that we want to, when we have this kind of realization that we want to live the best life that we can and use our skills and talents. And I think sometimes I look around and I see homeless people here in Oak Park and how can I help them? And I want to volunteer and that kind of thing. But I personally have tried volunteering in the past and it's not my best thing to do. My best thing to do is to take care of my family, cook vegan meals when possible, take care of Jeff, be kind to strangers, do what I can, do my improv, share good stories. That's kind of it really for me. It's very simple, but it's what I do the best. 24 stages of community building 2. And I think, have you ever been in a grocery store where you've seen somebody, mother or a father with a kid and the kid's crying and maybe you've wanted to step in and help. And I still struggle with that because I don't want to be, I don't want to be this person that thinks I know how to do things. But at the same time, I think maybe there could be, a smile or can I help or is there anything I can do for you? And they could come back like, no, man, your own business, But at least it would be maybe helpful. I don't know. I have to work on that. The stages of community building. Thick institutions are oriented around a shared moral cause. They don't see their members as resources to be exploited, but as fellow marchers in a holy mission. Thick institutions tear you down in order to build you up. They enmesh you with long traditions and sacred customs that seem archaic a lot of the time. They ask you to bury your own identity in the collective identity. They point to an ideal that is far in the distance and can't be achieved in a single lifetime. The secret of life, the sculptor Henry Morse once said, is to have a task, something you devote your entire life to, something you bring everything to, every minute of every day for the rest of your life. And the most important thing is it must be something you cannot possibly do. Okay. Chapter 25, the conclusion, the relationalist manifesto. Again, I'm going to the very last, because I think at the last they usually say what it's all about. When you see that, you realize joy is not just a feeling, it's a moral outlook. It's a permanent state of thanksgiving and friendship, communion and solidarity. This is not an end to troubles and cares. Life doesn't offer us utopia, but the self has shrunk back to its proper size. When relationships are tender, when commitments are strong, when communication is pure, when the wounds of life have been absorbed and the wrongs forgiven, people bend toward each other, intertwine with one another, and some mystical combustion happens. Love emerges between people out of nothing as a pure flame. So that was it, my friends. This is David Brooks, if you can see him there. He is he's a leading writer, commentator, columnist for the New York Times. So I hope I did his book something of a service, but I think it's a cool book to read. But basically it's, be true to yourself, use your talents and be happy, be joy-filled, because life is amazing and wondrous. So every moment, and here's what I love the most about life, to be honest with you, is that every morning is a new opportunity, and every moment is a new opportunity to do it differently, to wake up and feel the joy of life. Thank you so much, Comadre. I don't know if you even know that I'm doing this. This is the book that you bought for your son, Armando, and I kind of like just was reading it because I'm dog sitting here. Love you all. Have a fabulous rest of the day. Be true to yourselves.